Hey everyone, this is Matt from Story Prism, here to present another demo for you guys. I'm actually doing this because I recently got an email from a user who really dug deep into inquiring how to go about using this. And through that interaction, it really kind of taught me how to go about teaching people the best way to use this, right? Now, if you've seen the other demo videos and, if you just went to the site, you pretty much already know more or less what all these tools do. And you understand the concept, of course, of creating a node, right? And then you create another node, and then you connect the node, right? And then that shares information. But I guess the big question is, what does this mean? What does it mean to actually connect an output into an input, right? So I kind of want to just break this down so that it's clearly understood how the information on this canvas is being shared and understood by the AI assistant. The green, of course, means output. Red means input, right? That's data going out and into here. Now, if you Google search the different kinds of relationships, you're going to get a whole grocery list of things. There's sequential relationships, causal relationships, temporal relationships, and so on. But with Story Prism right now, since we're still in beta and we're still trying to build this, we really only just have one basic relationship, and that is a relationship of hierarchy, right? So this is being outputted into this, which basically tells the AI that this is related to a primary node, right? So this would be a primary node, and this is a secondary node, right? And then if you make more nodes, then it just keeps going down the line, right? Now, one of the things that a lot of people have been doing is they'll make a whole bunch of nodes, right? And what they'll do is they'll just connect everything together. And this approach is not good at all. You're thinking logically, well, if I just connect it all together, then the AI will understand that everything is related to everything, right? Because when you're writing a story, technically, every decision, every choice you make falls back to the central message. So it's all related. But you don't really want to approach it this way. A much better way to do it is what's known as the spoken wheel method. So let's just break this down. Let's say you create a whole bunch of nodes for a world. So let's just visualize this real quick. Harlan, he's a character, setting, let's call it that, chapter 1, right? And plot breakdown. Okay, so let's pretend just for a moment. I'm not gonna go to the trouble and fill out all the information. I'll actually skip ahead and show you a real sample of this. But let's say you have a whole bunch of nodes and you want to get the best outputs from AI. If it's unconnected, or if you connect everything together or just willy-nilly connect, then that can actually confuse the AI, because currently right now you're unable to define the relationship based on the lines, right? So you can't tag the lines and express a relationship. That's a feature that we're certainly adding into this. And we're also going to add in a whole bunch of other back-end work so the AI can understand intuitively the other various types of relationships. But for now, we just have the basic thing. So if you want to use this with the current setup that we have most effectively, what I find works is, first and foremost, I define the primary node that everything will be communicated through. How do you define a primary node? Well, that is the note that you will essentially be communicating with. You might have something like an expert novel writer or maybe the author, right? And it's just a whole bunch of conditions and stuff like that that you put in, right? It can honestly be anything. You can even have it be the scene or the chapter that you're working on. Either way, that is the primary note, and that is where all information is going to be connected to. Now, you can have a whole bunch of notes and just, connect output to input, and so on and so forth, right? So what I like to do is I like to group my notes into logical clusters. So, maybe you have your story elements here, right? And then maybe you have your character elements here. Okay, so I like to group them first together as such, right? And then instead of connecting all of these together individually to my primary note, what I like to do is I like to create another note, right? Cannot spell. Okay. And this is my overview note, or it's a summary note or whatever, right? So you can kind of think of it as like, the synopsis of what this entire, group cluster is. And so usually what I'll do, since I, presumably will have a whole bunch of information here, I'll just ask the AI assistant to go ahead and take these notes and create a comprehensive summary. I'll take that summary, I'll put it right into the overview note, and then I like to connect all of these clustered notes into this sort of sub main note. And then all you got to do is take this one little thing and connect it right here to your primary note, right? And now you have a very logical hierarchy. And this makes it easier for the AI to index and query and find the right information that it needs. So you can do the same thing with this cluster as well. And you kind of just group it all together and you create a structure that makes the outputs way better. Now, it's extremely important to note as well that this is not going to behave like your typical AI writing app where maybe they have like this whole back-end prompt that really sounds super friendly and has so much knowledge on writing and all this stuff. I mean, look, we are using GPT 4.1, so it does have that knowledge, but this AI assistant is specifically steered directly towards everything that you put on the canvas. So in a real sense, this is a blank slate. So if you simply ask it with very basic request, then it's going to reflect that. Okay, so let me back up. So if you ask questions and you don't have those prompts or that information on the canvas, then your outputs are going to be worse, right? Because it relies a lot less on the corpus of knowledge that it has external to Story Prism, and it's much more focused on the canvas itself. That isn't to say that you can't ask general questions about, such and such. It really is truly oriented to the canvas, and so it's always going to kind of steer back into that. So when working with it, don't limit yourself to only putting your story notes in it. Other things that you can put in it are other prompts, research papers, musings, right? Post on Reddit, stuff like that. Really just anything and everything, right? And you also need to pay attention to how you're structuring all of your notes, because if you just have your notes everywhere and you're connecting this here and that there and whatever and so on, then it's not going to have that hierarchy to really be able to query, right? Real quick, I just want to kind of show you what I'm talking about in terms of, creating hierarchies and structures. So what you're seeing right here is the entire first act of a famous movie, A Perfect Murder with Michael Douglas. If you haven't seen it, highly recommend you check it out. It's pretty simple, but, it's quite interesting. And so I decided to make this as an example. Obviously, if you're really working on a plot, you would probably make an entire Act 2 and Act 3. But for this example, real quick, I can kind of show you what I'm talking about in terms of like establishing the hierarchy here, right? Right here, I have my primary note, which is the expert screenwriter. Since I want to write a screenplay, I'm going to use an expert screenwriter. Then I had this note output to the expert screenwriter. So this is kind of the secondary note, and this is the Act 1 setup, right? So this kind of covers the title, logline, central message, characters, and so on. And I added the tags character, right? Because I do have characters in here. I have Act 1 setup, which is what it is. This is a summary of Act 1 setup. This also expresses the setting. This expresses the day in, day out, the situation. And it is the first set of events in the story. So this sort of gives it like full context. And these are keywords that I would commonly use when communicating with the AI. Give me a summary of Act 1. Boom. It's going to use this. Tell me about the day in, day out. It'll pull from this, right? First set of events. Give that to me. And so on and so forth. Then we get to the day in, day out, right? And this is the beginning of a movie. I have the whole thing just summarized. And again, I ended up tagging it in kind of a holistic way. You have Act 1 setup because it's part of the setup. I have a summary because it is a summary. It expresses the day in, day out. And I labeled it Event 1. Right? Because it is the first set of events that happens in the story. So that way, when I talk to the AI, it's going to go in that sequence. Otherwise, it will kind of just randomly pull notes, right? And then below that, I have the scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, right? So again, I labeled it appropriately. Act 1 setup because it's part of setup. Day in, day out because it is part of the day in, day out. It is, it's okay, I'll search for it. Scene 1. So it's scene 1, right? And I labeled it as moment 1 to differentiate between event 1. And this is something now that I can just be like, okay, tell me the first moment of the story. Give me the first set of events that happen in this story. And so then that will give you different outputs. The set of events will give you scene 1 through 3, right? The first moment will be scene 1. And then in the other scenes here, I pretty much have the same thing, but I also have after moment 1. And what that does is, again, it creates the sequence. It defines the relationship between scene 1 and scene 2 as this is the moment that happens after scene 1, because this is labeled moment 1, right? And so that's how you create that logic. And then, of course, with scene 3 and 4 and everything, it's after moment 2 and whatnot. So yeah, that's basically what I did. And so now you can ask it some crazy questions. So let's start with, I need to know what the certain moment is in this screenplay. Okay, so yeah, I got it right. It details Steven's next calculated move, right? So yeah, that's where he calls Dave Shaw. So he calls Dave Shaw. So there we go. So it queried the right information, right? Then what? What happens next? Oh, cool. And then it gives you the rest. So yeah, scene 4, scene 5, scene 6. So yeah. So that's really powerful and that's really cool. So you can imagine like you set up your entire plot structure and now, you know, you can go back and, query information. And you can also say, you can also do stuff like, is there a scene you might be able to add in between scene 5 and 6? Yeah, so, as you're building it out, you might realize, hey, I need an extra scene. Or maybe you do, maybe you don't. Ooh, I spelled scene wrong. Let's see here. Yeah. So doubt and pressure, right? Could be David's loft or neutral location, right? The scene would explore David's internal conflict more vividly. Maybe he wrestles with the moral weight of what Stephen has asked, showing signs of hesitation and fear. In the story, of course, he's asked to kill this rich man's wife, right? Definitely does not work with the story because of later things that happen, but still the point is, you can do whatever you want with this, right? And you can also go in the story section and it has your entire plot structure in the memory bank, right? Logically organized exactly how you want it. You can add so many other things to this. Additionally, one thing that can be really helpful is if either in the beginning of a note or after the note, you can do like an all asterisks thing, like this. Right? Just something like that. And then you can say rules for using note. And then you can come up with a whole list of rules and ways the AI needs to handle this note when using it. So that just gives you just a little extra control. Again, the key is to understand that you're kind of working with a sort of blank brain. So if you don't have anything on the canvas, or if you're missing things on the canvas, or you have them connected or tagged inappropriately or not tagged enough, then, you're just not going to get as good of outputs from the assistant. And it'll feel like it's broken, but it's not broken. It just needs to be built, right? Additionally, too, if you find that the prose is just, it's too robotic or it's not sounding good or it doesn't sound like me, that's because you're just not putting the information on the canvas. So you would want to put, author's discourse or discourse to use for outputs note. And you would want to express in intimate details how you want it to sound and then maybe even provide examples of your own work so it, stays with it, right? And then you could also add disclaimers at the bottom of all the notes to always use, this notes information, right? Always use this discourse. And then that will allow it to maintain the consistency that you're really looking for, right? So, there's a lot more that needs to be done in terms of building this out and making it way easier and more intuitive to use. So we definitely got a lot coming down the pipeline for you guys, and we're really excited to share that as we move along on this. But for now, hopefully this was helpful, and I'll try to think of more to come up with just to, help you guys really get acquainted with this so that you're able to maximize your use out of this. So, all right, until next time, bye.